Literally no study or like reputable scientific organization in the modern era take this position. Like you're just wrong. So your explanation doesn't hold up. So it must be something else, right? So
just a second, I will.
Again.
Go right back to it. But what I'm saying here is that here's what my argument leads me to.
No co-host, guys. Sorry. This is my workout. I don't have time to talk. This is just a motivation video.
With the gay lifestyle. Now, you say that
Motivate people to get off the backside. Do work.
That is what causes that problem inside.
I'm 50 years old. I'm still doing work.
I reject that premise outright because as we've become more egalitarian, it has not solved.
But no co-hosting, sorry. I don't have time to talk.
So I look at other factors. Just because I can't point to what the conclusive factor would be and prove it doesn't mean that inductively it doesn't make sense.
Sure. So the reason that I bring this up is because like your explanation is extremely weak. It just doesn't hold up. So okay, I mean the argument is that like the explanation that you're taking isn't like held by any study or reputable scientific organization on the planet. If you want to like talk about whether or not decreased stigma has led to lower rates of promiscuity, first of all, like even if that were true, that doesn't necessarily hinder my argument that it's some cultural force. It could be some other cultural force that isn't directly impacted by stigma. For example, perhaps the reason is that the homosexual community was born out, or the modern iteration of the homosexual community was largely born out of the sort of sexual liberation movement of the 60s and 70s, and so the sort of impacts and cultural attitudes of that movement still like resonate in the homosexual community today. Sure, it doesn't have to be stigma as long as it's some cultural factor, and that can be done away with, such that my argument that we should continue to destigmatize homosexuality still works. Your argument is that
something other than stigma, then who cares about the stigma?
Because stigma is a contributing factor. You seem to have this really weird like premise that it can only be one thing. Like I'm sure there's multiple factors that play into this. Stigma is undeniably one of them.
Assume that there are tens of thousands. There's probably still primaries.
Sure.
Okay, so
primaries, there can be multiple primaries.
Let's focus on primaries of problems.
Sure. Let's just focus on problems that we know exist, right?
So a gay person kills themselves because they kicked a rock one day and it hurt their toe, right? There's any number of mitigating factors that you could throw in there. But as a primary, I don't think that the social stigma, as it has been reduced, seems to be doing anything to solve these problems within that community. And your entire premise, once again, is that you want to alleviate their suffering. And I'm saying they suffer more by being homosexuals than they seem to suffer from the stigma of people disliking them being homosexuals.
Facts.
Sure. So let's run with the idea, okay, because you said, okay, maybe it's not stigma, maybe it's something like my explanation of, the sexual freedom movement, okay? Let's run with that for a second. So what we have is that A, the reason that gay people are so promiscuous is largely caused by some cultural factor, not necessarily stigma. And B, we know that stigma is a contributing problem to STDs and to other things like suicide. And so the solution then would be both to address the stigma, that's a contributing factor because that's independently causing harm, while also addressing the other factor that we're also acknowledging that may be independent from stigma. Because if the cause of these behaviors isn't necessarily like biological, but is some cultural factor, even if it's not related to stigma that we can do away with, then your argument that necessarily, if we promote homosexuality and more people become homosexual, that therefore they have to suffer, is an invalid premise.
No, it's still a valid premise, because even if we do all of those things, eliminate all of the stigma, and homosexuals are still suffering at the same rates they're suffering right now through suicide, HIV, and STDs, we've accomplished nothing.
You know, the question
we have compromised our value structure in order to be more accepting of the behavior that we don't agree with, nothing in exchange for it. Now you've been accepted, okay, but your suffering has been alleviated, and our institutions have been completely and totally destroyed.
So two things. So for one, I don't see how we have to destroy any institutions in order to accept them. Also, wait. Okay, so first of all, I don't understand how we have to destroy any of our institutions to accept homosexuality. Two, I like how your argument is that we shouldn't accept homosexuality because what if we accepted homosexuality and it didn't solve any problems? Like, yeah, congrats. If you were correct in a hypothetical universe, then you'd be correct. You're just question begging.
It's wrong. You're framing again. I'm saying right now.
Everything is framing. That's what it is.
It's not solving these issues, but we're having to compromise.
That's not true. It's solving
to eliminate your suffering, but it's not eliminating any of your suffering. And so we're making a compromise and getting nothing in exchange for it. That's my point.
Okay, so you're wrong. Like, well, you see that increased rates of acceptance of homosexuality doesn't have better access to educating people to things like healthcare. Like an increase in people being able to use STDs and a decrease in their and the likelihood to have like things like unprotected sex. Like we do see that the things that I'm advocating for empirically lead to reductions in the problems that homosexuals are facing.
If they lead reductions in the problem, in total, they lead to massive reductions. Even let's say if homosexual activity in and of itself is still damaging to suffering, even if you mitigate some of the suffering. You understand how that logically tracks?
I understand how that logically tracks. I don't understand how that logically is consistent with things that you yourself have said earlier. Because you earlier were making the claim that, even if it's not stigma that's causing the problems, it's still other cultural things. So even if we're going to say, this is a purely semantic. Say, okay, sure, it's not stigma, it's some other cultural factor that's also contributing to the rate of promiscuity among homosexuals. Among homosexuals. We can still address that while also addressing the stigma, such that when we address the stigma, if more people become homosexual, it doesn't lead to things like increased STDs, because we've addressed the other cultural ones as well.
The only problem you have with that is that even if you produce the mitigation that you're talking about, okay, it's not what you have in current data is that the mitigations with egalitarianism is not enough to solve, it's not close to solving this issue because it seems to be choice-based, meaning it seems to be choice-based to have this homosexual partners, it seems to be choice-based within this community to do these activities that are extremely high risk. So the damage that happens to homosexuals from their own behavior seems to me to cause a lot more suffering to the homosexuals than any of the stigma or mitigating factor that you could point to that we need to take care of to reduce the suffering to the point where it would make sense to just not be a homosexual instead, or the homosexual activity of sodomy. That seems to be where all of the high-risk factors come into play. It's simply from homosexual sodomy.
Okay, so a couple of things. So, for one, you said that we've seen empirically that because we've become more egalitarian and the outcomes we've seen with regards to homosexuality hasn't been wholly reduced, that therefore that's evidence that completely eliminating stigma wouldn't reduce wouldn't solve the problems of homosexuality. Okay, so what was your argument?
I said if you mitigate it down, and it's still more dangerous to engage in the activity. Okay, even after you have a completely egalitarian society.
But we don't have a completely egalitarian society. What are you talking about? You're making empirical appeals.
We can look right now at the 70%. And say that as we've had more egalitarianism with homosexuals, these rates have not significantly reduced. Do you understand? It's that simple. So, if we have 100% egalitarianism, why would we expect that they would mitigate down to the point that the activity itself still wasn't more dangerous than not promoting the activity? It's very simple. And
Okay, sure.
you keep reframing every time.
You're right now. What you're doing is framing. I hope you understand that.
Well,
But anyways, what you're saying is.
My
Are you
argument is
okay?
supposed to be framed.
Okay.
You arguing against it is not supposed to be to reframe it. That's
Okay, here we go.
how that works.
Okay. So, anyways, so you're saying that because we have reduced stigma, and you're saying it hasn't reduced certain problems, that, like, therefore. Well, okay, you keep saying that, but, like, I've already explained to you that when kids aren't rejected by their parents, they're less likely to commit suicide, they're less likely to have unprotected sex. When places have legalized gay marriage, suicide rates have dropped in those specific states. So you just keep saying things that are just wrong. Yes, significantly.
Significant.
Do you want me? I can send you a study. It is statistically significant.
Not significant enough that the rate still wouldn't be higher than the general population if you reached 100% following the 70% trend.
That doesn't follow. Okay. So you're saying. Okay, so what you're saying is that if we reduce okay, so if I'm saying that stigma causes, certain problems or is largely responsible for certain problems, and you're saying that if we reduce the stigma and the problems still exist more than they do for the general population, then therefore reducing the stigma isn't a viable solution. But that doesn't follow because you can say that we've reduced stigma, but the stigma, even at a reduced level, is still higher for homosexuals than it is for the general population. There's still a lot of fucking discrimination against gay people in the United States. There's still a lot of gay people in the United States who are rejected by their parents. There's many straight people who are rejected by their parents for being straight.
I won't address the crux of the argument. So, one more time.
You keep changing what the crux of the argument is depending on which one I've just addressed, but go for it.
Mitigate the risky behavior to the point of egalitarianism that you want, which if you're on track right now at 69%, 70%, 75%, right? It's way over 50%, and it has done very little to mitigate these issues within the community. Then, if your goal is to eliminate suffering, then telling people, hey, if we mitigate these things, you'll suffer less, is less good than telling them not to engage in the activity, because then you won't suffer at all. The suffering that seems to happen within this community, even with all of those factors mitigated down, let's say, to zero, if it tracks then that the actual activity itself is still damaging more than being a heterosexual is, then you should be promoting not to engage in the activity at all.
Sure, so a few things. So, for one, you say that, acceptance is, way over 50%. I feel like these numbers aren't doing exactly what you want them to. So, you can say,
Oh my God.
this many people support gay
Stupid kid.
marriage, for example, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be okay if, their own child... I support, gay marriage, but then, if their child comes out as gay or something, they might still have a problem with it, or, do something that negatively, harms the child's mental health. Additionally, you said that, we've seen, increased rates of acceptance, and it hasn't reduced the issues. I've already explained to you that it has. It has reduced suicide, it has reduced STDs.
Enough that reducing the activity wouldn't be better to reduce the suffering.
Because we haven't gotten rid of all the stigma.
Okay, but even if we're on
We haven't
track
just...
at 65% egalitarian, we know when we get to 100%, based on the trajectory we're on right now, it will not reduce it more than not engaging in the behavior will to alleviate the suffering. It's that simple.
We don't know that. I don't even know why you would...
We can look at the acceptance rate. Acceptance is not stigma. It's that simple. If your acceptance rate is at 70%, okay, and the reduction rate is at X, which is very low, then you can kind of project out to what it'll look like at 100%. And you can actually follow the trend on a line graph in order to do that. It's very simple. So if you reach 100%, you can pretty much project going forward that when you reach 100%, the risk factors are still going to be extremely high. It's not going to be mitigated enough by simply eliminating the stigma. Or likely even these other factors, which we don't know what they are, I guess, either.
Sure. So, okay, so the problem is like you're running this like calculation where you're trying to like map on like how much egalitarianism we have, you know, how much there's been a reduction, and try to see, okay, well, if there was a complete reduction, how much would that like reduce the problem?
That'd be a bad idea. How to reduce stigma.
Because the data that you're working with is not indicative of what you want it to be indicative of. So, like, for example, there are a variety of intersecting different problems in different areas of society that create the problems that stigma generally feeds into. So, like, for example, one issue is a lack of LGBT people having access to healthcare. One example is a lack of LGBT people having access to like sex education, or having access to condoms, or having access to lubricants. Some of it is just being rejected by their families. And so you can look at, you know, certain data points like, oh, we've gotten to this much egalitarianism, and that this is the amount of people who tell a pollster that they're fine with like gay people, or they're fine with gay people getting married. But that doesn't necessarily map onto conditions about how many gay people have access to things like education, or how many gay people are being rejected by their parents, or how much gay people have access to healthcare. Like, there's so many different complicated factors playing into this that just using polls on like general acceptance, or general like acceptance of things like gay marriage, does not tell you how much the actual problems that cause the externalities I'm appealing to have been done away with.
Okay, so then by that same exact metric, you can't say that doing away with those metrics is going to solve the problem either.
because we can look at, like, for example, we can look at studies where gay people have been given interventions. Like, there was one interesting study that gave people like a one-time class on like how to engage in like more safe sex activities. We can look at interventions that have happened where, you know, people are given access to things like sex education, where gay people are given access to things like gay marriage. We have seen that on these specific metrics, when gay marriage was legalized, suicide goes down. When people are given access to sex education, to get STDs, yeah.
So the more equalized we get, then the more those problems are solved. So once
Okay, but your understanding of equalized is very simplistic. That's the problem. Because you're just using, well, it does, because you're just using this metric of acceptance, where it's like how many people in a poll said they're like pro-gay people, when the actual issues that feed into this are much more multifaceted and complex. You need to analyze the specific problems. You need to analyze specifically the state of LGBT access to healthcare. You have to look at specifically being rejected by their parents. You can't just look at this overly simplistic idea of like polls on general acceptance in order to get an accurate picture of this. And when you look specifically at the things I'm pointing to, you do see that giving gay people access to healthcare, allowing gay people to get married, reductions in the outcomes that I'm trying to reduce.
they lead to some of those reductions with egalitarianism, but they don't lead to enough reductions. They don't.
Can you tell me how much of the... You're not even familiar. How could you make that claim? You're not even familiar with the studies that I'm referencing. You don't know how much these reductions have been. Yes, you do.
So you guys,
You don't know how much the reduction has been.
My turn. I'll tell you.
really quick before you do that, after you guys are done with this argument, we're gonna start to wind it down, do closing statements, so finish what you guys are at now, and we'll go to the Q&A.
All I need to do is look at what the rates of suicide is, the rates of STDs, the rates of sexual partners, et cetera, for degenerate behavior, and look at how much has been mitigated as we become more egalitarian, and it gives you a fairly clear picture of where we're heading. I don't need every study under the sun to use those metrics. You just continuously say, I reject those metrics because it's just way too complex and you just don't understand it. I think it's actually quite simple. And I don't think you've made a compelling case at all, for egalitarianism or trying our hardest to be accepting of homosexuals is going to solve any of these issues that you have in your community, or even necessarily mitigate them. And those things transfer over to heterosexual community, especially AIDS. That's a big one that transfers over from bisexuals engaging in homosexual sex primarily. So these are big problems that do affect me that that deserve to be looked at with heterosexuals also, as to whether or not we want to continue to accept this kind of behavior. Because if we do, then these are the types of results we're going to end up with.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to generally restate my problem. It's not, or my problem that you're saying. It's not surprising to me at all that you don't think I've made a compelling case, because it seems that you haven't even comprehended the case that I've been making. So generally speaking, my point is that you are saying that we've seen society become more egalitarian, and we haven't seen sufficient reductions to say that if we went all the way, the reduction would be gone completely. However, what I'm saying is that your calculation is based on metrics for egalitarianism, which are overly simplistic, because you're just looking at like generalized rules, like how many people say they accept a certain thing, when if you really want to look at the things that actually feed into the problems that I'm talking about, you have to look at specific discriminations in specific institutions and specific factors, like family rejection, like lack of access to certain things like condoms and lubricants. And when you do that more nuanced, specific analysis of these specific problems and how much they've led to specific reductions, you do find that there are substantial reductions. And since you're not even familiar with that data, because you haven't even bothered to engage in the more nuanced understanding of how these things work, you cannot say that you can be confident in the fact that these reductions have been too small, because you don't even know what these reductions are, because you haven't even read any of the studies. So yeah, that's why.
In closing, what I'll say is this: very simple. He reframed it one more time. He said that what I'm looking for is I'm looking for metrics of reduction. That's not what I'm looking at here. What I'm looking at is, can we reduce this down to a point? Can we reduce this down to a point where the behavior itself doesn't cause this type of issue with overwhelming HIV, with overwhelming STDs, with this type of thing? And should we as a society begin to promote same-sex outcomes rather than homosexual outcomes, knowing that the more egalitarian we become, it doesn't seem to be mitigating the effects of of STDs. It doesn't seem to be mitigating the effects of any of these issues. So that's what my point is that if we can't mitigate it down to the point where not engaging in the behavior is better than engaging in the behavior because the behavior is high risk, then we should be promoting not to engage in a high risk behavior.
Okay, so I guess for my closing statement, sorry, Bree.
I thought you made your closing statement.
Okay, sure. I'll do it right now. So for my closing statement, I will just say, I'll finish off with a concrete example, because it seems like, again, like you're just not understanding the point that I'm making. So let's do like a concrete example. So one of the big reasons why gay people have higher STD rate is, like I said, a lack of access to things like healthcare. And so we can say that society has generally become more accepting of LGBT people, and yet they still have like more STDs. But the reason for that could be because the healthcare industry doesn't say, hey, people have homosexuals, so therefore we're going to alter the services that we provide. Like, if you look at the healthcare industry in specific, it operates on a basis of profit, not like that's essentially. Wait, hold on, I'm trying to make my. Okay. So the actual problems, or the actual things that are causing the problems I'm appealing to, don't necessarily just map on to your like overly simplistic metric of how egalitarian we are as measured by like the polls that you're appealing to. You're trying to make the claim that the reductions we've seen based on us becoming more egalitarian don't give us confidence that we could reduce it all the way. But the problem is you're working off a simplistic understanding of what egalitarianism means, when if you take a more nuanced approach and look at like the specific institutions and things that I'm talking about, you do see massive reductions. That doesn't help the point that we could never reduce these things completely. You just don't have
Oh.
the data to make the claim that you're trying to make.
Sea views for days. Oh,
My kid is so stupid.
Virgin Voyages food is absolute.
Andrew schooled him a long time ago.
Alright, we got a lot of questions, so let's get to some of those. That was a great debate, by the way, guys.
That wasn't.
Alright,
Andrew just
so
throwing him.
from the drone, ask Andrew how accepting gay people makes their lives worse.
Because it promotes same-sex sodomy, and that's what leads to these massive issues. One such example that I pointed out was the HIV rate, which is transferred over to the heterosexual community, and that does involve me. Also, we weren't able to get into it, but there's large rates of pedophilia, especially with young boys, and that's a large problem too. Maybe it's something that we can discuss at a future date, but it does make our lives worse to promote same-sex unions. It does make our lives worse to promote same-sex in general, just based on those two factors alone, but there's more that I could get into later.
Alright, so from Mod Zone, if homosexuality is a choice, why would anyone choose it? Good question.
Who is it addressed to?
I'm guessing probably you.
I think it's a deviancy behavior. If you listen to some homosexuals who've spoken out on this, like Milo Yiannopoulos, for instance, he doesn't believe for a second that it's a necessarily a born this way thing. There's lots of gay people who don't think it's a born this way thing, and I don't think so either, because I don't think children have sexuality. All right, I think it's a learned behavior, and there's a lot of correlation with that between molestation rates as well.
Alright.
So let him address it too.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
The thing that I just don't get is like, I mean, the amount of people who kill themselves who are gay because of like the problems that they face because they're gay. I mean, these people must be like, I mean, if you, like your understanding of this is correct, these people must be incredibly stupid. Like, why don't they just choose to stop
just
gay?
deal.
Okay. Well, like, if it's a choice, why can't they just choose to stop?
Okay, so from Eric Cohn, Andrew, why is heterosexual relationships the only norm in society?
Because it is. Period.
That's pretty simple, Eric. All you have to do is look at the rates of homosexual behavior versus heterosexual behavior. It's very easy to affirm what's in the normative and what is not.
Exactly.
Okay. So from Base Twin School Mom for mouthy, I guess. Gallup poll from 2020 says that only 2% baby boomers identify as LGBT, while 16% of Generation Z identify as LGBT. What does he think has caused this massive jump in homosexual identity?
Yeah, so the thing that we have to sort of disaggregate here is that it's not necessarily a rise in homosexual identity. In fact, much more so than the rate of gay people going up, the rate of like bisexual people has gone up, like quite a bit. I don't exactly know why. My personal explanation would probably be just that, like, in general, people have always been a lot more bisexual than they've let on, and the fact that it's now becoming something that's not shamed in society, people are just like more okay, like saying,
Maybe in your freaky world.
you know, how they feel.
You sick freak.
Might be my guess, but
So more egalitarian, basically. More egalitarian, problems still remain.
Oh, excuse me.
What's the secret to peak health? Going micro with Noom. Micro habits.
a rise in homosexual identity. In fact, much more so than the rate of gay people going up, the rate of like bisexual people has gone up, like quite a bit. I I don't exactly know why. My personal explanation would probably be just that, like, in general, people have always been a lot more bisexual than they've let on, and the fact that it's now becoming something that's not shamed in society, people are just more okay, like, saying that that's, how they feel. Would be my guess, but...
So more egalitarian, basically. More egalitarian, problems still remain.
What problem? People being bisexual.
Yeah, it's a problem that comes in.
I mean, that's a little question begging, but alright.
I'm not begging anything. I'm making a declarative statement.
So from Dunkel Height, does Andrew believe that homosexuality is a choice? Does Andrew believe the oppression of individuals for their own safety is acceptable? Does Andrew think? I don't know if there's something more.
Well, yeah. So to answer that as concisely as I can, we'll start with the second question first. Do I believe that the oppression of individuals for their own safety is acceptable? Yes, we do it all the time. Nonstop. That's all the coronavirus lockdowns are, in fact. If you're asking me politically, he says, do you believe that homosexuality is a choice? I do. Here's why. Even if you are born that way with a proclivity towards only having same-sex attraction, the definition, the way that it's defined by most people, is same-sex sexual activity and sodomy. Sodomy is certainly a choice.
So I guess there was more to this question. So does Andrew think the supposed dangers of homosexuality outweigh the important individual freedom and self-determination, even if we accept for the sake of argument that homosexuals are?
I do. If the cons outweigh the pros in society, then we ought to be able to have our say on it as well.
So there's more to it. Okay, so more promiscuous and live more dangerous lives because of this. Not promoting the acceptance of homosexuals for their own safety does not reduce the number of homosexuals and only. I'm guessing there's more to this.
Maybe
so knowing.
The next one, geez.
Yeah, homosexuals and only. Only serves to oppress and vilify homosexuality is pathetic and not in any significant way determined by environmental, societal factors. The proposed solution solves nothing and only. Oh my God, it just keeps on going. And only increases oppression. I'm guessing that's the end of it.
Okay.
So I don't know if you caught all that or not, but do you have an answer to that?
No.
Okay.
That was to a whole book.
I have some more that I wrote down from earlier because this starts to cut off if we go too long. So Aaron Cohn said, "Where is the proof that people are naturally monogamous? The Bible holds up monogamy as exceptional."
No, not really. It doesn't really hold it up as exceptional. It holds it up as exceptional for powerful men. But generally speaking, monogamous relationships and even marriages have been social norms in the West. But even before in Arab nations, even in Egypt, it was very much social norms around marriages in monogamous relationships.
Alright, so from Miguel, question for Andrew. Why should we oppress individual sexuality if it leads to rape and pedophilia culture? Check any society where religion oppresses sexuality.
Okay, well, liberating sexuality hasn't really done anything to decrease any of those things. So there's that. In fact, I would say that it's increased rates of same-sex molestation. But again,
Where's the data on that?
well, again, we're in the Q&A portion. I have the data ready for it, but we'll have to get into it at another debate or whenever.
Okay, from Base Homeschool Mom, question for Mouthy. Studies show that due to technology, the average boy first views pornography at age 11. Does he believe this doesn't affect development of sexuality?
Does it affect, like, the development of how they approach an experience, like sexual attraction? Yeah, I'm sure it does to some extent. Now, the question of whether it like can turn people to like from being straight to being gay, I think is a total different question. I mean, I think whether or not like access to pornography is like turning children gays, like I'm skeptical of that idea, but ultimately, like you need to show me like some evidence that that's happening, I guess.
Alright, so from the drone, Andrew, why should anyone be treated poorly because they have a disease that affects them more than other groups?
They shouldn't. I didn't say they should.
Okay. Alright, so, from Post Manifesto for Andrew, does he have any proof that you can reliably stop people from engaging in homosexual activity without causing other problems?
No, there's going to be some other problems associated with it. But again, look at societal gain versus cost. So is it possible that there's going to be other issues that come up out having a pro-family, pro-heterosexual message to society instead of promoting homosexuality? Maybe there'd be some mild blowback, but again, I can't really see what there would be from making that type of promotion, to be honest with you.
Okay, so from Wonelli Media to Mouthy, can you explain the other issues in the LGBTQ community outside of sex, like violence and anti-LGBTQ legislation?
Issues in the LGBT community in terms of like what societal issues are LGBT people faced with?
I guess so.
Yeah, so I mean, beyond like legislation, there's just issues of things like family acceptance, there's issues of things like, you know, what's being taught, like what kinds of sex education are being taught in school. There's questions about like, you know, peer acceptance, you know, like, you know, whether or not kids are being ostracized in like their social circles for like, there's a variety of issues that generally stem from stigma, sure.
Right. So from Western Artifact, Andrew, if you think trans is genetic, wouldn't you prefer them not procreate in hetero relationships? The genetic dead seems too favorable to your view.
I don't even know how to answer the
I
question.
don't know what that is. Okay, so from Crazy Ball, question for Infidel. Do you think gay people have less access to condoms and lube than straight people?
I guess gay people don't know where the hell the CVS is at.
I mean, that's just like a fact. I have like multiple studies that I brought up earlier in the debate showing that gay people have significantly reduced access to condoms and lube.
So they don't have access to CVS or Walmart?
Studies, the correlations
Kid, you're goofy.
found tend to suggest that the reason that they have less access, or people, gay people are less likely to have access to these things, and they tend to have more experience with things like stigma and discrimination. So yeah.
Alright, so from Sobek, curious here, and I'd like a response from both. Why the focus on HIV? Do the stats on all STDs in general not look way different? Focusing on HIV exclusively.
HIV will kill you.
Well, the stats on STDs are even worse, actually. I think it's 3 in 4 gay men have an STD. I'm not sure, but I think it's roughly 3 in 4.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, whether or not we focus on STDs or HIV in general, or I mean HIV or STDs in general, my argument is like fundamentally going to be the same, and that I think the prevalence of these things, the disparities, are largely driven by certain cultural factors, of which stigma plays, like currently existing stigma, plays a large role, and I think we should be working with that to address those problems within the community. On HIV specifically, my guess is because it's like the more deadly one. I mean, if you get herpes, like, you know, you have herpes, whatever, you know, if you get HIV, it can be like an actually deadly thing, which tends to be more like effective rhetorically to bring up.
And it's convenient in the abstract when we were discussing this particular thing, having this argument back and forth.
So, alright, so one question from earlier, from Drew. How does accepting gays make their lives worse?
Well, it doesn't necessarily make their lives worse. to accept them. But if it's not going to make them better,
Ah.
it could make heterosexuals' lives worse. And the entire concept and point that I'm trying to make is that if you look at the rates of deviant behavior and the mitigation that comes from acceptance, you're not going to reach the plateau, even at 100%, where it's enough to mitigate the behavior, where his argument is I want to eliminate suffering by promoting this activity. That's where the catch-22 comes in.
All right, well, I think we are all caught up. We got one more. So if you guys have any last questions, send them right now because we're going to shut this down after this. So let's see, from Post Manifesto, question for Andrew. Is there any evidence that promoting heterosexuality decreases homosexual behavior? If so, please provide us with
It was already provided in a previous question at the rate of 16%. So, yeah, I think that there is something to be said for the promotion of homosexuality. Now, what his argument will be on that is, no, see, as we become more egalitarian, people will come out, but at the same time, we need to be more egalitarian, and that is going to be what solves and mitigates these issues. It's kind of absurd, really.
Okay, so my actual argument would be that, it is undeniably the case that increased acceptance of homosexuality leads to increased homosexual behavior. And of course, Andrew's argument is that that's bad because homosexuality leads to certain negative, outcomes. What I would say is that, in the absence of these people engaging in homosexual behaviors, they're still going to have an inherent desire to engage in.
I'm sorry, if you guys don't like this,
That's
then
still going to be a part of their
stop
identity.
following me.
It's not going to be open
I will never
and that lack
alienate somebody for being a homosexual or bisexual,
cause
but I will never,
negative
never,
outcomes
never,
anyways, even
ever
if they're not
accept their lifestyle.
engaged in homosexual
So,
behavior
never ask me my opinion on homosexuality or bisexuality,
Shiva.
because you won't like it.
To Andrew, do you think there is something inherently miserable about being gay causing increased
I'll never accept it.
suicide,
Never.
that it's not cultural, like STDs or promiscuity, or just
Now, feel free to unfollow.
I do. I think that what you're dealing with is you're dealing with a very small subset of the population that's suffering from a severe form of mental illness, and that if it was treated like that, maybe we could actually mitigate some of the suffering. But it's not treated that way. It's these transgenders. That's an important distinction to make too. Is that this is a mental illness and it's not being treated as a mental illness. It's being fed. And I think that that's what probably more than likely leads to those higher rates and problems when it comes to suicide and this type of thing.
Really quick to sync. If you're saying something, I'm only going to the comments that are tagging politically provoked. So I'm not sure if you had a question, but if you have a question, you got to tag politically provoked for me to see it. All right. So.
Did you say beat it? That's funny.
Did you say that? Okay. All right. So from Jungle, how is homosexuality and pro-life worse? HIV rates for heteros are extremely low.
Yeah, but they wouldn't be there at all. Like bisexuals who generally contract it, and this is what the data shows that bisexuals are the ones who most commonly spread it to heterosexuals at this point.
Okay, so from Wonelli Media to Mouthy, can you explain the other issues in? Wait, didn't he already ask this one?
Ah!
Yeah, I don't know why it's coming up again. All right, so from based on school to Mouthy, why not promote monogamous sex inside marriage? Doesn't it solve all the problems caused by unrestrained sexual activity?
Yeah, so I guess I wanted to get to this earlier, but I guess we didn't have the chance to. My position is that a lot of people have this really weird moralistic idea that somehow being non-monogamous rots the soul or it's intimacy or something. I don't buy any of that. I think the one thing you could say about non-monogamy is that it might make you more likely to get an STD. And unless we're talking about something like HIV, I don't even think that's like a particularly big deal. Like most STDs, you know, like you have them, if they go away, they don't like kill you, it's fine.
Oh my God.
Like, yeah, I mean, as long as you're
You're sick, kid.
non-monogamy in a way where like you're using condoms, you're making sure the people you're with are like tested. I don't think there's a particularly like big risk or issue with non-monogamy, which I guess ties into the argument about homosexuality, because if we were able to, even if we didn't promote monogamy among homosexuals, even if we were able to normalize like making sure your partners are tested, getting tested yourself, you know, using protection.
If you guys out there
I think we could
think it's no big deal
by itself,
to
like,
catch an STD that doesn't kill you, then you're mental. You got some sick. You're sick in the head.
Not making a case for
If
why
any people think that way.
homosexuals are monogamous.
You think, oh, HIV's bad, it can kill you, but other things that don't kill you, who cares? No big deal. Yeah, it's a big deal.
We should just
It's disgusting.
The time has come. I'm finally
People are sick, man. Especially on the left. You left liberals are sick, man.
Is kicking off.
We should just find better ways for them to not be monogamous.
Not on me.
And the damage to them by them not being monogamous.
If they don't want to be monogamous, then just let them do what they want to do while eliminating the harms associated with that behavior rather than trying to.
Your position is, well, studies show that being monogamous isn't necessarily a good thing.
Correct.
Bullshit.
Right. So you're not promoting studies that say that monogamy is bad.
And people want it. No, I never claim to have studies saying that monogamy is bad. My claim is that.
Kid, you just said it, you retard.
Necessarily a bad thing, except for it can increase risk to STDs. But there are.
How is being monogamous increase risk to STDs? You're not having sex if you're monogamous, stupid.
Monogamy is bad. We just have to say, okay, if you want to do non-monogamy, that's fine. Do it if you want to, but let's try to address the risks associated with that, such that we're not seeing the negative externalities that we're
Can
seeing.
you explain what you just said there, where you said monogamy leads to STDs?
Thank you.
Non-monogamy.
No, the
I
first.
may have misspoke.
No, you said monogamy.
Then okay.
Alright, so from Miguel to Andrew, don't you think that increasing accepting the acceptance of homosexuality is disenfranchising people from society that will refuse to engage in it?
Let me reread this right.
32, 33, 34, 36,
Yeah, I do. I do think that
40, 42.
if I'm reading this right, what I'm trying to say is,
I'm not saying I'm any angel by any means, man, but jeez. I mean, 25 years ago, I used to be a stripper, so
the way that
I'm no angel by any means. I'm no saint. But I've grown up and I've learned.
homosexuality and heterosexuality.
Trust me, that deviant behavior does nobody, especially yourself, any good.
Yes. The answer to that is yes.
Right, so from Sinkil to Andrew, what's the number of sexual partners in older lesbians to say they aren't as promiscuous as gay men?
Less. That's all it has to be.
I think we are all caught up, so we can probably shut this down. Thank you so much for coming on, both of you. I thought it was a great debate.
Shirley, how may I help you?
We got shot. Just walking down the street, man. Michael in the car came and that was it. I don't know who did it. We fucking fucking I drove away. I have no idea who shot us. Michael died and he was bleeding to death.
Did you feel it when it hit you?
Yeah, I'm up, right, 45. You guys have a fight driving to the hospital. We were in a car. I had these two black kids from my neighbor. I knew them good. I said, drive me to the hospital. I'm shot. I said, drive me. You gotta be going. Then he got off the siren. And the guy's like, they start fighting. I said, you gotta take me to the hospital. I'm bleeding up there. And then they took me to Pennsylvania.
That's crazy. Who was the funniest mob guy?
Why are you gonna say mob? Just friend. Yeah, who's the funniest friend? Yeah, funniest friend.
That's a good point. We'll edit that out, okay? What's up, gentlemen? Thank you guys so much for coming over today. I really appreciate it. A lot of stuff I would love to get into. I would love to know why you're the youngest person to ever get banned from every casino in the United States. I'm curious about the story of how you robbed an armored truck. I'm curious if there's any gay members in the mafia. I'm curious how you survived prison with terrorists. I know you've talked about Sammy the Bull before, so I'm curious your thoughts on him. But before we get into all that, let's just start at the very beginning. Why do they call you Skinny Joe?
The media gave me that name.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No one ever called you that growing
You know
up?
who gave me the name? The organized crime. No, nobody ever called me that my whole life. I had a was skinny. So I guess when they used to follow us, they used to say which one, the fat one or the skinny one, you know?
No
We had the same name. We had the same
Was
name.
that kind of flattering for you at that time?
I still used to call me. Nobody ever called me that when I was a kid.
When you saw it in the news for the first time,
The news gave me Skinny Joey.
were you a little flattered?
No.
I mean, I mean, if I was the other guy, I don't want to be fat. That was my feeling.
Skinny Joey.
What the fuck? This is crazy. You guys have great podcasts. I've been listening to a bunch of episodes lately, man. Really, really fun.
Fly straight. Always do what's right. Treat others kindly, and always do work.
And then it's just sports picks, and we're talking about sports all